Islam is a religion of peace. Bullshit. That phrase, Islam is a religion of peace, was never said till George W. Bush.
Islam is peace.
Find me anyone who's educated on Islam, who's a non-Muslim, who doesn't side with Islam. You have to understand that I grew up in Luton, so I grew up listening to Muslims all the time. 50% of the town's Muslim. I heard the derogatory comments about Jews. I saw the attacks on Jews. The Luton Islamic Centre, which is the terrorist centre, which is where terrorists after terrorists after terror plot come from, that's the old synagogue. There's no Jews left, yeah? Right. So I understood very quickly. I was inspired by Geert Wilders. So I listened to him, I learned from him. Two people who helped me in my early days as well in understanding Islam was Robert Spencer, Pamela Geller. And so my worldview has been shaped by my upbringing as well in the town of Luton. So I saw lots of this. I saw lots of hatred of Jews. So from the time we started, so when people have this view that I used to be some sort of racist, never have been. In fact, I sat down on Trigonometry recently. It's a big podcast in the UK. And they said, well, you've evolved. It's like, no, I haven't. No, you've evolved. Yeah? Everyone else has evolved. I haven't evolved. I'm saying the same things I said in 2004. Dig up a leaflet, which I'd done at the Oxford Union presentation. I dug up a leaflet, and if you take that leaflet that I made in 2004, which made the front page of my newspapers, and you read it, nothing's changed. What I say in that leaflet, we don't have a problem with ordinary Muslims, but there's a problem going on in our town. Why do the police not deal with them? Why are the heroin gangs not dealt with? Why are the terrorists not dealt with? Why are we attacked? Why aren't they? Why are there racial and religious attacks against whites and blacks in Luton?
What you're fighting for, this idea of fighting against the Islamism of Luton, of the town that you grew up in, is actually something that 70% of this nation has. People who come from my background, Avi Yamini, who works with you closely, we're Mizrahi Jews. We're the Jews who came from the Middle East. Yep. We have a direct relationship with Islamism taking over our countries, our villages, our homes, kicking us out of our homes, and eventually expelling us or just murdering us outright. So when I was looking at the crowd that you were speaking to, I was like, wow, the people who Tommy is speaking to right now, they really get what you're fighting for. The question is, have you learned anything here in your time in Israel? You've been here for 10 days or so.
Yes.
Have you learned anything you feel you can apply from this country towards your fight in the UK and Europe?
I first come here in 2016 to learn. And the reason being, I knew our future is your future, wherever you are. So I wanted to come and understand, how do these people live surrounded by jihad? How do they live? What's the security implications? What's our future look like? How much freedom do they have? So I come here and I saw your bus stops, 2016. And I saw how fortified they were with bollards. And I thought, that's our future. And remember, we didn't have this then.
Correct.
I thought, wow, we're going to have to live like this. Now, so you understand, in Britain, we have to have fortified, every town centre is fortified with what we call diversity barriers, yeah? Christmas markets, machine guns, police with machine guns. And I actually done a story on this where I showed the Christmas markets in Poland, in Hungary, and then I went to the Christmas markets that were cancelled in Paris, the Christmas markets which are fortified with bollards all around them in London, in Manchester, and said, what's the difference between these two areas? So in Poland and Hungary, they're still enjoying their freedom. They don't have to fortify. Why not? Because they haven't had Islamic immigration into their country. So we're supposed to just accept the change to our nation when they're importing, giving home to the Muslim Brotherhood, allowing Hamas, allowing all these terror groups to thrive and grow. And whilst that happens, we lose our freedom, we lose our safety.
When people in the UK, in my opinion, start thinking in that way, that when you lose, 90% of London to Qatar, when you lose 5% of your country to a radical movement, a radical religion who wants to take over, you're in an existential threat. You got nowhere else to run.
And that, I keep saying that now, where are we meant to go? Yeah. When the country changes, when the demographic changes, when Islam takes over, where are we meant to go? Now, the Pakistani community, many of them, well, they can go back to Pakistan.
Right.
Somalians, well, you can go back to Somalia. But us, where are we meant to go? England's our country, it's our homeland, that just like this is the Jewish homeland.
Correct.
We've got 1,000 years of Christian history, and we are not going to give it up. That's what I say. We're not giving it up. We're not about to just be silenced. But the problem is, or the encouragement is that they managed, through these slurs and these smears, like they're doing now to Israel, they managed to prevent the public speaking out. They managed to demoralise the public. They managed to paralyse them with fear. Because everyone was scared about being called a racist, and rightfully so, because that slur and that attack, remember how, if you want to know how powerful it is, it paralysed our entire country's police force, our government, and it allowed the rape of a generation of our daughters at what we now call grooming gangs.
And then they turned a blind eye to it.
They
as well.
turned a blind eye and allowed kids to be raped because they were scared of being called racist. And the government and council did it because all they care about is power. Now let's put that equivalent to understand an analogy with Israel, with the Jewish community. So they allowed a generation of our daughters to be raped, and the Labour Party and the government allowed it because all they care about is power. So they didn't want to upset their vote bank. So rather than upset their vote bank, kids can get raped. Now, in 2013, and this is important to understand the Labour perspective on this, what they think. I was in my hometown of Luton, I looked in 2013, and I looked at the demographic growth projection for the communities in my town by 2030, so over a 17-year period, how the town was going to change. Bangladeshi and Pakistani community were going to increase by 70 to 77%.
Crazy.
The black and white community by 1.2 to 1.4. So Labour, the council, they know what's the future. It's the Pakistani and Bangladeshi community in towns like Luton, which are many towns now across the UK. So rather than upset them, they let them rape. Now the Jewish community make up 400,000 in the UK, I'm not sure, yeah? But the Muslim community are 5-6 million, probably more. So, are they bothered about how the Jews vote? No. How is their future coming from siding with Israel? No. These political parties and these groups know the future for them is to appease this group, like they just done, recognising a Palestinian state.
Right.
That's it. And everyone is appeasing, even Nigel Farage, who's Reform's leader. He sat in an interview recently and he said the Islamic demographic in the UK is going to become so powerful by 2050 that we cannot alienate Islam. Now, if you're already putting up your white flag in the UK, how do you not alienate Islam? Well, you give in to them. And what does giving in to them look like? It looks like recognising a Palestinian state. It looks like throwing Israel under the bus. Now, Israel needs to understand
and the Jewish community in the UK. You see the reaction by UK government after the Manchester attack on Yom Kippur, and it was abysmal. I mean, they were openly laughing about it. There were protests in support of the attack an hour or two after. That is a part of that problem. That's giving up. That's raising the white flag, saying, you know what, take over my country.
What's the future? What's the future for the Jews? What's the future for the non-Jews? Yeah. What does it look like? Well, you have to understand that in towns and cities across the UK, the dominant group are the Muslims. Yeah. The dominant, whoever controls the streets controls the town.
Correct.
I know that from growing up in Luton. Whoever are the gangs on the streets, they've got the control. They're militant, they're up for violence, they're running drugs, they're running prostitution, they're making money. They have it all. They use their corrupt money to influence politicians, to influence police. And unfortunately, the Pakistani community, like the jail I just went to, the prison I was in had a 40% Muslim population. Like, what sort of overrepresentation is that? And they're overrepresented in criminality, in gangs. It's like a Pakistani mafia across the UK. Now, why is that dangerous? Because the next generation, wait till this next generation come through. Because the next generation come through, no one can speak up on behalf of Israel. No one can really speak out against Islam because they are so strong in the schools. Right. They act in gang mentality. Now, we need a mass awakening to wake up the public, but we also need to build a British community, which is what we've been doing under the United Kingdom, where we're saying to everyone, listen, we need to defend our culture and our identity. We need to stop giving in, stop surrendering our values and understand what built this nation. And the United Kingdom movement is about, again, it's my ethos from growing up in Luton, it's about uniting everyone. I don't think that the good migration that's come into the UK, the integrated and assimilated migration, should be turned on. I think that it should be celebrated. And we are grateful to many communities for the great way they've embraced and loved our nation. Yeah, my mum comes as an immigrant to the UK.
Correct.
Right? But rather than embrace and love our nation, many of those that have come from Islamic nations with values that are like oil and water. You're trying to mix oil and water. Yeah? And so long as you allow the influence of Qatar and Iran and these nations in the UK with their money, with their propaganda, with the influence they have over media. Well, the funny thing is, you know what they do so well? They play the victim and they play the underdog. So let's see what they do. Gaza and in Palestine, they play to the world that they are the victim, they are the underdog. Right. But in reality, Israel's this big, yeah? And it's surrounded by 23 Islamic nations. And all of them have proxy armies from Iran and these countries. There's jihad surrounding this nation. The real underdog here, on the world stage.
And that, by the way, when the Arabs and the Muslims, they talk about Israel-Palestine, it's very important to remember, they don't represent it equally to the two of us, right? So when they're talking about it to us, to random disenfranchised white people in the West that they want to appease, they'd say it's an Israel versus Palestine conflict.
No, it's not. It's Israel versus the Islamic world.
Versus the Arabs. It's the Jews. When they represent it in Arabic and in Islamic circles, they say it's Israel, it's the Jews versus the Muslims.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Israel becomes the micro underdog.
You could not have 1,000 young Pakistani youth and a Jewish family having a picnic, because that Pakistani youth would turn on that Jewish youth.
Correct.
But not here. So I remember looking at it thinking, something's working better. You've got a 20% Muslim population. You see, when Europe gets a 20% Muslim population, war, jihad, takeover. Absolutely is coming. Look at the chaos that's caused now. You know, in Britain, we have 40,000 Muslims on a terror watch list. This is where the British public need to wake up. Look what 5,000 Muslims done on October 7th. 4,000, however many. Now, we have 40,000 on terror watch lists. Now that, if you keep increasing the demographic of the Islamic community and you don't deal with the terrorist groups or the radicalisation, the extremism, then 40,000 is going to become 80,000. What the hell is going on, man? What is going on? And across the West. Now the difference is, anyone in the UK or anyone in Europe, or find me an ex-Muslim who doesn't support Israel. Find me an ex-Muslim that doesn't support Israel. Because any ex-Muslim understands the ideology of Islam. They understand the dangers, so they understand that Israel is the ally and they understand what Israel faces. Find me anyone who's educated on Islam, who's a non-Muslim, who doesn't side with Israel. Now the people who are siding against Israel with Iran, like Dan, they've not grown up surrounded by Muslims. They don't understand what it's like. They have no idea of the hostility or the aggression. I want to hand down a safe and prosperous Britain the same way you want to hand down a safe and prosperous Israel. We only get there by waking people up, by waking the country up and understanding what we face. And getting through the lies, Islam is a religion of peace. Bullshit. What are you talking about? It never has been. Do you know that phrase, in one of my books, that phrase, Islam is a religion of peace, was never said till George W. Bush. And it's like the genocide, it's like the far right, Islam's a religion of peace, just keep repeating it. And then it's spoke about as a matter of fact. No, it's not. It's a conquest ideology. It's a violent, warlike ideology, that has raped and pillaged its way through the world. And it would love to do it here. So what is my goal? My goal is to unite Britain. It's to awaken Britain. It's to use my journalism, but it's also to build a mass movement that can swing public opinion, that all of the politicians, I sit there and look at them, and they're having to shift. They're having to shift. And they may want to attack me. Trust me, in the next 2-3 years, many of them are going to have to stop attacking me, because we are going to be representatives of the biggest movement of the British public that our country's seen. We are building a cultural revolution in Great Britain, and they're not going to stop it. They're just not going to stop it. Nothing they can do to stop what's happening. It's happening.